Good morning. Thank you for joining me for today's video. My name is Tracy Held. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Melbourne in Australia. It's my regular Sunday morning stamping and I'm quite excited about the card that we're going to make today. Let me show you what it is. There you go. So this is one of those cards. I don't know whether you've noticed these vintage bottle shaker domes in the catalogue. I'm not very big on shaker cards, so it wasn't on my radar until I saw a friend of mine working with them, and then I went, oh, that's actually quite nice. And I've had them sitting here for a few weeks, and now that I've actually used it, I'm thinking, I don't know why I haven't used this before, because they're fun. And if you put the beads inside, my husband was sitting and shaking the card for ages yesterday because he was making music. He thought it was the best thing ever. Okay, let me show you what we're going to be using today. So first up, I've got the Bottled Happiness stamp set, and we've got the matching vintage bottle punch. For the sentiment over there, I'm using the Cup of Tea stamp set. So we're going to be using the sentiment and the tag. I'm going to change up the sentiment. That one I used the Sending Cheer from the Bottled Happiness. This time I'm going to change it around. And then DSP, I'm back to my Textures of Chick. Now, I know that I've shown it to you before, but this DSP just is sort of the gift that keeps on giving because it's awesome. It's just absolutely beautiful. And both sides are extremely usable, and every time you look at it you see something else. So absolutely fantastic DSP if you don't have that. We're then going to be using some of the Baker's Twine Essential Pack. I'm just using the brown one for my little bow. And then of course those vintage bottle shaker domes that I was talking about. And we've got these effervescent elements which make the little bubbles inside them. Now, if you haven't noticed those, I'm just going to show you in the catalogue, and I have marked them. There are the shaker domes. Okay, so that's on page 141. And if you flip over the page, here are the effervescent elements. So that's what we're using for the inside of the dome. Okay, now I'm changing up the colors a little bit. So our stamps that we're going to use today, Blushing Bright, Pool Party and Crumb Cake. And let's get started. I'm going to do my stamping first. Now, you may find different ways that work for you. So for me, the easiest way to deal with this, or not to deal with it, but to do this, is to first punch out my bottle. So the measurements are up in the comments, and I've cut this piece of paper that it's pretty much the exact size of the punch. So just line up the sides, push it in that it's going all the way to the edge, and punch your bottle. Now you'll notice with this one I didn't do that. I didn't push it all the way to the edge, and it's not sitting quite flat. I don't know whether if I hold it up you can see. See, it's not sitting quite flat at the bottom, so you actually want to push that all the way so that you have a little bit more space where you're going to stick it. Now we're going to do our stamping. So first up, the flowers. And the stamp does look like it's fairly random, but when I stamp it, I like to stamp it so that those little spotty bits are going up. Okay, now I'm just positioning it that it's over the top of the bottle. That's why I wanted to stamp the bottle first, so that I could see where to stamp my flowers. And there we go. It's maybe a little bit over to one side, but I'm not going to be too worried about that. Before I put this away, let's just, while we're at it, stamp the insert, because we always have to have the insert stamped. So just going to stamp some of those flowers onto the corner over there. Now we've got the second stamp, which is going to put in all the leaves and the insides of the flower. So this time I'm going to stamp that in crumb cake. I just realized I showed you the paper and I told you we were changing the colors, but I didn't show you what I was actually going to be using. So our card base is going to be petal pink, and I'm going to use that piece of the DSP. The reverse side is that, so you could use either, but I like those gold elements in there. Okay, now this does actually line up with the inside of the flowers, and because I don't want to get my head in the camera, let's just hope that it's lining up correctly. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. Okay, and of course we just need to stamp the inside for my insert. There we go. Right, so I'll put that aside for the moment. Then I want to stamp another piece for the inside, the back of the bottle. Can you see there we've got that sort of green showing through for the back of the bottle. Now this time I'm going to stamp my bottle in Pool Party, and it just depends on you whether you want to stamp it straight on, or whether you want to stamp it off. Now my Pool Party is quite juicy, so I'm going to lightly stamp off and just see how this looks, because I wanted to have that sort of, we want to be able to see through the bottle, through the dome, but at the same time I wanted to have that sort of not quite blue, not quite green, you know, old bottle look. And we're going to punch that out. And then I need my tiny little tag. So I'm going to stamp the tag in my crumb cake again. And my sentiment in my blushing bride. And this is so teeny tiny. Let's just make sure that I stamp it the right way up, because, yep, okay. I just couldn't see which was up, and I don't want